felt great. Madam Chair, I have another amendment, please.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
Page 37, line 17, by striking and ending before April 1, 2021. In line 31, by striking all after 1, by striking all in lines 32 through 37. In line 38, by striking M.
Representative, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, body. So as you heard, what this amendment does is that it just strikes that section 6, subsection 1. That requires an additional 14,000 Kansans to be out of work for 3 months, so that an individual may receive about $488 a week for about 4 weeks. And so while I often don't quote any lawmakers from that lesser chamber across the hall very favorably, regarding this section, a member of the majority party over there did say in this time right now, this is probably a pretty tough one to keep in. And I couldn't agree more. If we look at our past, economic crises, especially in 2008 and this recent COVID crisis, both of them saw workers lose their jobs basically through no fault of their own. And so the argument is that full unemployment is below 5%, but in its most recent economic projections, the Federal Reserve has put 4.1%. But Jerome Powell said that when unemployment nationally fell to only a 50-year low, that was about 3.5% without spurring any inflation. And so this tells us that what is essentially full employment is at a lower job rate or jobless rate than past, right? And so in closing, I urge your support of the amendment. I don't think that an additional $1,952 is too much to ask for our hardworking Kansans. And I think it would behoove you all to support this measure, as wise constituents no doubt would respond positively to our compassion. So with that, I'll stand for questions. And we did run this amendment in committee, just for your edification. Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak on the Clayton Amendment, the chair will recognize Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Body, this was discussed in committee, and it was one of the changes that we thought necessary during our deliberations. And when we drafted the bill, we had the 4.5% trigger raised to 5%, because that is what the U.S. Department of Labor determined is full employment. At 5%, actually it's 5.1 or 5.2% employment or less, it is very easy to get a job. Currently in Kansas, we have 50,000 jobs available and nobody to take them. So I would encourage you to defeat this amendment. It is important to get these people back into the workplace sooner rather than later. And if you give them more time, it's going to just draw out the process and they're not going to be sharp. So please, let's vote against this. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to speak on the Clayton Amendment? The chair recognizes Representative Prost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We talked about this. We did talk about this in committee, and I'll raise the same point I raised there. Tying this to a statewide average does not allow for local realities. We've had situations in this state where there's isolated examples of change in employment, change in the employment landscape, and I mean, just to name a few, we had the Tyson fire. We had years ago, we had a huge snowstorm out west that kind of crippled things for quite a while. I just think that tying the time that you can get benefits to a statewide employment rate doesn't allow us enough flexibility to address local conditions. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to the Clayton Amendment? Representative Sawyer. I just didn't see a light.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I can't seem to get my computer going. Turn my light on. I do rise in support of the amendment. To follow up on what the last speaker said, last year, in January, a year ago, it was our delegation, the Central County delegation, it was critical to us because layoffs were announced at Spirit. We had that localized hit in Wichita, so a lot of people were losing their jobs. So the delegation put together a bill to strike that 4.5% unemployment requirement because the statewide unemployment was lower than that. And we needed to keep our workers in Wichita, around Wichita, after they lost their jobs. I think it points to exactly what the last speaker talked about. We have these localized situations where we're tying the benefits to a statewide unemployment really doesn't meet the needs of the people across the state of Kansas. Now, what happened was, last session, as you recall, then as COVID came and it did strike the whole state, we passed a bill that for the past year struck that 4.5% requirement and just moved everybody to 26 weeks. That's the way most states actually do it. But I think right now we are still in a crisis situation in Kansas. A lot of people don't have their jobs. I think we need to show some compassion and help people out as much as possible. This amendment helps the situation a little bit, so I'd urge you to support the amendment.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the bill? The chair will recognize Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In committee, we did discuss this thoroughly, and it was voted down. The reason it was voted down is because we want to get people back to work as soon as possible. So we do not want to go back down to 4.5%. We want to keep it where it is. I encourage you to not support this amendment. Thank you.
The chair will recognize Representative Curtis on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we did discuss this in committee. I actually offered the amendment. And I just want to bring us back to what we are talking about. We are talking about those people that have been reaching out to us in desperation through emails, through phone calls. They're desperate. And we talk about needing to get people back to work. Absolutely agree. In Wyandotte County, we have over 6,000 jobs that are open right now for people to take. Why aren't they taking them? Well, I tried to dig into that a little bit. They aren't taking them because, one, they're trying to balance homeschooling their children because schools aren't open. They're trying to figure out what they do with their children when they do go back to work because of little access to quality child care. There was also the issue in Wyandotte County where workforce partnership was not even available for several months for people to even know about the jobs that were available. So I think this is a very small measure to give people the extra time that they might need to try to balance their life and their work life and their family. And I just think that we need to keep that in mind. Keep in mind who we're talking about, and be compassionate. We have to help people. They're reaching out to us for help. And this is just a very small thing that we could do to help them. So I hope that you will support this amendment. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the Clayton Amendment? Seeing none, Representative Clayton, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Body, the previous speaker did outline quite well the extenuating circumstances that we are dealing with. Normally, extending unemployment benefits 1 month would seem almost overly indulgent. But given some of the numerous hardships, the balancing, and the fact that we have a lot of people who are now underemployed, who need to work on taking time to negotiate salaries that continue to keep their families in prosperity, as opposed to doing worse than they are, I do think that giving them this additional time is, again, a move not only of compassion, but of common sense, because we want our constituents not only to be employed, but to be employed in the best jobs possible for them to run their households and their families. Madam Chair, I close on my amendment, and I will ask for a division vote.
You've heard the motion by Representative Clayton to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Division has been requested. Clerk will open the roll. has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, a roll call is in order. We are now on a roll call vote.